PQs are a critical aspect of government accountability, as they are the primary means by which MPs can scrutinise the government's performance, as well as to reflect the concerns that are brought to us by our constituents. To that end, it is notable that questions posed by MPs to one ministry may be redirected to be answered by another ministry without prior reference to the MP. From my understanding, such redirection is done by the government ministries and not the parliamentary staff. Of course, sometimes the redirection is justified, such as when the MP may have inadvertently asked the question to the wrong ministry. For example, questions about banks may be mistakenly filed with the Ministry of Finance when the bank regulator, the monetary authority, comes within the province of the Prime Minister's office. However, it seems to me that questions may also be redirected simply because the government finds it expedient to do so. This may undermine the main purpose of question time, government accountability. To take a recent example, the leader of the opposition had in August last year filed a PQ to the Ministry of Transport asking for LTA's assessment on the demand for bus services on the routes being plied by the special shuttle bus services at Marine Parade GRC. Even though his question asked for LTA's assessment of transport needs, his question was redirected to the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth without his input. When he rose to ask supplementary questions which were transport-related, the Minister of State for MCCY was unable to answer them and instead invited the LO to file a question with LTA instead, notwithstanding the fact that the LO had initially done so. While the Minister for Transport did step in shortly at that session to address the LO's queries, the question still remains as to why a question posed to LTA was redirected to MCCY in the first place. Sir, question time is precious. Limited to usually 90 minutes per sitting, MPs compete to have their questions chosen for priority listing, failing which they either let it lapse for written answer or hope to have priority listing on another day. When a question is redirected to a ministry that cannot address the MP's concerns, the MP may face procedural objections to refiling it. Moving forward, could MPs be consulted on any intended redirection of questions so that our input can be taken into account?
At the end of the day, what is the purpose of parliamentary questions? The purpose of parliamentary questions is so that members can ask questions about things and the ministers can reply. It is really for the government to assess and determine who would be in the best position to respond to the questions. And in some cases, MPs actually do address the question to the wrong ministry. For example, the Ministry of Finance frequently gets PQs on the Monetary Authority of Singapore. But Monetary Authority of Singapore reports to PMO, not to Ministry of Finance. So essentially, when the PQs come in, the Parliament will look at that. They will send it to the ministry that is named. And the ministry that is named will have to look to see whether this is under the ministry's purview or whether another ministry is best placed or is the policy owner or has the carriage of the operational aspects. So that is something you should leave to the government to determine. It's not really for the MP to decide who has the relevant knowledge. It's for the government to, looking at the question, to determine who amongst us, who amongst the agencies and the ministries is the one responsible or has the knowledge or is in the best position to respond. What is truly important at the end of the day is that the question is responded to. And that effectively is what is done. Because no matter who the question is redirected to, which agency or which ministry, there will be an answer provided. And if at the end of the day, the question from that particular, the answer from the minister or ministry is not sufficient, the MPs do have the opportunity to come back and to ask further questions in another PQ or on another occasion. I think in the example that Ms. Lim cited of the LO's PQ that was filed addressed to the Ministry of Transport asking for LTA's assessment, my understanding is that the bus decision in this particular case was made by People's Association, not MOT or LTA. And it was therefore not for MOT to explain why the shuttle bus was launched, because that was a scheme done under the People's Association. And People's Association is a statutory board that comes under MCCY, and that is why the Minister for Community responded to that. That said, I believe the Minister for Transport, Minister Chee Hong Tat, did rise to clarify a point from the Leader of the Opposition, as he had asked with respect to the bus connectivity enhancement program, and that comes under MOT. So because that one came under MOT, the Minister for Transport responded to that.
First, on government deciding which ministry should answer the question, does the leader not agree that sometimes questions can cut across more than one ministry, and the MP actually would be the one to know what is the focus of the question? And therefore, is it not possible for there to be a procedure where there's some loop back to the MP to ask the MP, all right, we intend to redirect it to another ministry, do you have any concerns about it? And then at least our input can be taken into account.
I think we would not want to put in place a process where every single question that is filed, you have to go back to an MP and check what was your underlying intent. I mean, really, members of Parliament, when they file their questions, should make their questions clear. Now, if in the situation that Ms. Lim describes, where it is redirected and the member feels that it should not go because the underlying intent was to ask the other ministry something, the member is always free to reach out to the relevant minister and explain that. Actually, usually what happens is when we get a PQ that is not very clear, usually the ministries or one of the, either the SPS or the Minister of State will reach out to the MP to ask, what exactly are you asking here? There have been cases when we've had to do that because the intent of the PQ is not clear. It doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes when it's ambiguously worded, we do. And then in that instance, once we ascertain from the MP what is the real intent, then we can decide whether to leave it with one ministry or to redirect it to another. But on the face of it, questions ought to be clear if they're properly drafted. And if it's clear and it appears to us that this falls under the purview of a particular agency or ministry, we will redirect it accordingly. And like I said, it's not as though the MP has no chance to come back and file a clearer PQ directed at the ministry or agency that the MP wants. So the MPs are not shut out.
Just to respond that under the standing orders, an MP may be precluded from filing a question again if it is deemed to have been fully answered. So that decision, sometimes there's a tussle between the relevant officers and MPs about this.
A very quick response. The first point she made, Ms. Lim made, was that because of the standing orders which says that if a question has been answered fully, then you cannot bring it again. But that's the point, because if the MP felt that this was supposed to be addressed to another ministry, it must follow that it's not answered fully. So then you can direct it to the other ministry.